everyone, I'm Rishi Persad. Welcome along to Racing Weekly, a podcast and YouTube show brought to you by Oddschecker in association with Bet365. Lots coming up in the show as always. We'll reflect on what we've seen, the best racing in Britain and Ireland from the last week or so. We'll have David Pipe on the show, who'll be talking about his horses and maybe to one of the issues in the sport. He's having a very good season down in Somerset. And we'll also be looking ahead to the good racing coming up this weekend, particularly at Ascot. And I'll be doing all of that in the company of Sam Turner. Sam, how are you, pal?
Very good, Rich. Thanks very much. Yeah, emboldened by another Wolverhampton Wanderers victory and some good racing at the weekend on ground, which was, well, I think it probably gets a bit softer on the moon, doesn't it, than it did at Newbury on Saturday.
Well, let's hope that the ground's not going to be too much of a talking point between now and Cheltenham, because I'm sure it'll be a talking point at Cheltenham. But yeah, the dry weather, I mean, obviously it's been either too wet, too dry, now too dry again, so hopefully it will just settle into nice ground, but it doesn't look like it's anywhere on the horizon at the moment. Just before we start all our deep chat, a reminder to everyone who watches or listens to Racing Weekly that the Racing Weekly live show booked in for Monday, the 6th of March, we're at the George Pub in Chiswick, and a reminder that tickets are on sale, £10. We are, of course, going to preview all the action at the Cheltenham Festival. For that tenner, you're going to get free drink upon entry, and most importantly, that half-time pie. Sam's asked for the menu, actually, haven't you?
Yeah, it's on my rider, Rish. Normally it's sort of Jaffa cakes and jelly babies and stuff like that, but I want to know the internal machinations of what pie we're going to get.
I'm hoping to have a nice selection of pies, lovely warm pies at half time. The link for the ticket we found.
You've asked from pre the evening starting and post the evening starting as well, haven't you?
Well, I mean, I'm not getting paid in cash, is all I'm going to say.
No.
The link for the tickets can be found in the description of the show, and hopefully as many of you who watch the show can be there in person to see myself, Sam, definitely Johnny Ward, Pat Cooney's going to be there, and one or two guests. As I said last week, we are in deep discussions and negotiations with one or two real stars. So hopefully the big guns involved at Racing Weekly will be able to convince the signatures. I mean, it's a bit like signing, I don't know, Kylian Mbappe. That's the sort of level we're talking about.
You don't sort of intimate who you're going to sign until they're actually signed on the dotted line, do you, Rish?
No.
You don't let the cat out of the bag and alert other preview nights.
Who's the biggest signing Wolves have ever had in the history of Wolves?
It's a good question. I think the most influence on the club in the last 2 decades has probably been Ruben Neves, and he was only sort of 15 million. He was an incredible buy, really.
That's the sort of money we're looking at for our guests.
Yeah. Well, if we get out of our guest what we get out of Ruben Neves, I'll be very happy.
Well, stick around because we will be patting at least one of our guests on the back when we return for Racing Recap. And speaking of pats on the back, not only are we going to pat Steve Mellish on the back, last week's guest, but we're also going to pat Sam Turner. Aucunrisque won the Betfair Hurdle, and both Sam and Steve were keen on the chances of the Chris Gordon trained runner and advised Aucunrisque at a bigger price than his SP return of 9-1. Very good day for Chris Gordon, Sam. Hopefully a good day for you too.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, I just copied Steve's thoughts really, so it was great to have him on. If we could have him on every week, I'd probably be the leading tipster in the country. So
he's very active, so
the ball is in the court of the odds checker bigwigs really. But no, great day for Chris Gordon, and just the last 2 or 3 years, the emergence of the yard really from being a very handy national hunt concern to one that is capable of playing at the top table has been brilliant to see. Obviously, it was quite an emotional afternoon, I think, because young Freddie managed to bag a winner, and just coming off the back of that horrible fall really at Wincanton when he was jettisoned into the last hurdle by Sammy Bear, who was subsequently, I would say, repaid young Freddie with a narrow victory at Kempton, but certainly wiped away the thoughts of that Wincanton fall or unseat. And then obviously at the weekend, 2 very high profile winners for the team, very much a family concern. and brilliant for all concerned. He's a great character, Chris, brings a lot of colour to the game. And, you know, he's been down at Paul Nichols's riding out alongside his son on occasions this year as well. So he absolutely adores the game, and brilliant to see people like that having big days in the sun.
Yeah, I enjoy the fact that often when you speak to him, it seems his feet are firmly planted on the ground, no matter what the result, whether it's a win or a loss, whether it's a big win or a small win or whatever. He generally just seems to be nice, and he's got a level of which he's not going to get carried away. He's going to enjoy what's going on, but he's not going to get carried away.
No, they just look as though they're sort of a family, you know, going places. And Chris is like a trainer who's always in fifth gear, isn't he? His enthusiasm's infectious. He's always got something to say. You know, whether that's sometimes, you know, point blank about something he feels is a injustice in the sport. And I think these sort of issues need highlighting. You know, he doesn't necessarily strike me as someone who talks with agenda. He talks from the heart and with a passion for the sport. So, you know, all power to him, and great to see him having such a good season.
As for the winner of the big hurdle, Bet365 have this horse at 8-1 for the Grand Annual, top of the market. What do you think about those, or the chances of Aucunrisque in that particular race?
Well, I thought what he did on Saturday was pretty exceptional, really. I mean, he's gone hell for leather. He's led a number of horses that were, you know, potential front runners, including a stablemate. He got softened up, or could have been softened up, by the big outsider, Connor Brace Road, you know, who was wide on the track and then joined him, and they looked as though they were over racing for 2 or 3 furlongs. And then he saw off a very well handicapped horse and came 11 lengths clear of the third. I mean, it was a pretty astonishing performance. I think sometimes we get it wrong with the front runners, don't we? We say, oh, he's done it the hard way, or she's done it the hard way. But I think there's actually some merit in that opinion on Saturday, that he left it all out there on the track. I thought it was a very clever piece of placing and training. It came hard on the heels of the last couple of renewals where Chris has managed to get horses into the frame. You know, with limited sample size, you wouldn't have 10, 15, 20 horses that will all be sort of able to run in that race, you know, handicapped well enough, or even handicapped high enough to run in that race. So he's very much targeting 1 or 2 horses from his stable at that race, you know, and he ran 2 on Saturday, and one of them won. And I thought it was a very cute piece of placing after, you know, 2 or 3 novice chase performances, and I thought it certainly advertised, you know, the merits of the likes of Boots Hill and even Frere Darms, who beat him around Newbury in a handicap early on in the season. I think he's on the sidelines at the moment, that Dan Skelton trained horse, but he's certainly one to look out for when he's fit and firing again.
Okay, definitely a name to bear in mind. Good effort from Farley Bay, the gamble, finishing back in second. Good from Sam as well. Very good day for the Gordon family as a whole. Freddie, of course, rode Annual Invictus earlier in the card, son of Chris Gordon. So there were some very happy faces from the Gordon family. Some very happy faces from the Philip Hobbs family and team. A 3,000th winner for Philip Hobbs. His stable in better form, but not a surprise that has come courtesy of Zanza at Newbury. A little bit of surprise that Zanza has proven so good to dismiss that Denman Chase field. How do you see it all from that race on Saturday, Sam?
I think there's a number of factors. I think that meeting often throws up the odd shock here and there. You know, I can remember a number of sort of high-profile defeats, and it is, like Trials Day at Cheltenham, very much a stepping stone into the festival. So horses run there to get ready. That was Zanza's Gold Cup, effectively. He was so potent round Newbury in the past. I think he was 4 from 5 going into Saturday's race. Obviously, that record very, very impressively enhanced and handsomely enhanced by a tremendous performance. And I remember asking somebody early on in the year, it might have even been sort of on this pod, that, you know, why isn't Zanza running in races like the Old Hennessy? You know, anything at Newbury he could run in. I think he's only been beaten once there. I tipped him in the Betfair Hurdle there. I think he was last turning in. He got beat 2 lengths and finished 6th. It was an incredible run. For some reason, you know, the lad just absolutely adores the track, and you know, it was a bit of a miss, really. I look back and think, yeah, because I'm a big exponent of course and distance form, and you know, to not back and tip him was criminal, really. But anyway, congratulations to Philip Hobbs. 3,000 winners up, you know, it's no mean achievement, that, and just proves that he can still do the job, doesn't he?
Any particular favourites from the the Hobbs 3000 winners?
One favourite, Rooster Booster. Absolutely.
Really?
You know, yeah, without shadow of a doubt. And it is pocket talking, but you know, the horse won I think one of his first 14 runs before he won in the county hurdle, and then came out the next year and crikey, we saw a different horse, didn't we? Won his next 5, absolutely hosed up in a champion hurdle, won by 11 lengths, 17 runs in that champion hurdle. He stuffed West Ender, never came off the bridle, looked like he jumped in at the bottom of the straight.
All the way through that race, wasn't it?
I've never seen anything like it. You know, he was just a fabulous horse. Then went on to Aintree. I think he might have got beaten narrowly at Aintree over 2.5, but that year was just his year. I mean, he barely came off the bridle. It was just to see the improvement in him was astonishing. And I'm an absolute sucker for those travelly things, you know, the ones that swing their way through a race. But he actually, whether he was just growing up, maturing, whatever, you know, he'd done that in a number of races before. And people forget he'd been placed in the Betfair Hurdle. I think he might have even been placed in a county hurdle before he actually won one. But yeah, he certainly matured and grew up that year, and he was probably one of the most impressive champion hurdle horses we've seen.
The old grey Rooster Booster, top class. Or Defi Dassault will be mine. Soft spot for him. And I remember when he won the Juice, and as it was back then, he beat Lost in Translation. I thought, yeah, he was going to be destined for stardom. The real merit in Philip Hobbs's training there is that Defi did lose his way for a little bit, but he got him back on track, and then he reeled off a string of big race success again. Disappointing, of course, he didn't win the Queen Mother Champion Chase, and sadly he couldn't keep that form going. But I thought Philip Hobbs did extremely well to get him back to the level after obviously a brilliant juvenile hurdle campaign, and he was a very, very good horse and well handled by the team. Flagship Uberales, Menora, Captain Chris, amongst others that you can mention. Yeah, What's Up Boys, 1 or 2. He was very good.
Yeah, what good old What's Up Boys. Yeah, I remember having. Well, I would have had a really, really nice touch. Was it the Coral Cup when he came out of the clouds, and was it Native Dara that had gone clear?
Yeah.
It was like 50 or 60 on the tote. I seem to remember having my 10 shillings on, and good old What's Up Boys flew out the clouds and nailed me on the line.
He looked visually like he was going 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, and he also beat Barajan, which I'd napped for the Shropshire Star as well, and he came and did him on the line as well. So he wasn't a favourite of mine, Rich. Thanks for bringing that up. I'm still undergoing counselling.
Yeah, there's good and bad.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Game Spirit Chase and Funambule Sivola. Perhaps slightly an underappreciated 2-mile chaser, but he's getting, I think, a lot of credit now, rightly so. He won the race again. He's 40-1 for the champion chase with Bet365. Obviously, he ran well in the race last year. The Grenadine was disappointing for me on Saturday. What did you think?
Yeah, and it's a race that he's disappointed in the past, hasn't it? It was a pretty much a horrible day for the Nichols camp, really. I think they have 6 favourites, and no success. Although Hitman, I thought, ran really well. Perhaps more of him later. But yeah, I thought it was a smart ride from Charlie Deutsch. Probably a big price, wasn't it? The winner. It's easy to say in hindsight, but for a horse that had won the race 12 months before, so the ground was a little bit of a question mark. A bit like Gentleman to me, I thought he was being campaigned with a view to perhaps shipping up in a Grand Annual off admittedly quite a toppy weight, but he'd be a class horse in the handicap. But I suppose those plans have been blown out of the water. But no, terrific performance from him, and a horse that came back and won and repeated his victory from 12 months ago.
Yeah, well, you more than happy to mention about Hitman now, if you would like to, because I obviously talking about Zanza. Denman Chase, we moved on to Philip Hobbs, but Hitman I thought did run really well and almost could have done with going perhaps a little bit faster. I thought, considering how he finished off the race. Yeah,
possibly. Although they engaged in quite a pace battle up front, didn't they? With Kalashnikov firing away up there, and Eldorado Allen, who was a disappointment really. I think I probably dodged a bullet there because I thought he might be one to bear in mind for the Ryanair, but the Tizard team took him out of that race. Leading up to the Denman Chase, and just left him in the Gold Cup over Cheltenham. I thought he ran poorly. Admittedly, he was all the way around the inner. and he was always being pressed on his outside, where he was probably going half a stride quicker than he wanted to. But he tamely dropped away, and maybe he felt the ground a little bit. I don't know. But I thought Hitman ran well. He stuck to his task. A few people are calling him lily-livered this year, and I think that's a bit harsh. I think he's a young horse with quite a reasonable CV at the moment, and I think he could be one of those type horses, a bit like Plan de Zobo, that just takes a little bit of time to fully appreciate what the game's all about, to mature. Still a young horse. I wouldn't write him off just yet, Hitman. I think there might be a nice race in him somewhere along the line, and we might find that nice Aintree.
Yeah, Paul said he's going to run in the Ryanair, and then whatever happens, he's going to go to Aintree. So
right,
yeah, Aintree would be right up his street. Obviously same way around. When he cruised around at Haydock, he jumped beautifully, travelled well. Similar story. I was worried in the early part of the race as a Hitman fan that Kalashnikov didn't give him a hard time of things, but actually saw off Kalashnikov fairly comfortably down the back straight and turning past the cross fence. Then Zanza just seemed to come at him quite quickly, and he didn't respond as quickly as you would have wanted, obviously, but he had done a little bit of work. But he stayed on so nicely at the end that it encouraged you to think that he could go back up and trip. Obviously, the King George is one you line through. I'm still holding hopes out that Hitman's going to be a very, very good horse. He already is, in fairness, but could be even better.
Just one final point on that. I wouldn't be surprised if perhaps his trainer did think about putting some cheap pieces on at some stage. He doesn't do it very often with the horses, but he's got a really good record when he does. I don't think we're quite at that point yet, but I wouldn't be surprised somewhere down the line if he did.
That's a fair shout. What about the Kingmaker Novices Chase break? Now, this probably will form. I think this will form probably the meat of this recap, because I find it fascinating the way the race all unfolded. And obviously now El Fabiolo is favourite at 6-5 with Bet365 for the Arco, and Jonbon, the winner of the Kingmaker, is 7-4. And then after that, you've got Mighty Potter at 92, Dysot, Dynamo 5. So still Jonbon near the top of the market, but replaced by El Fabiolo, who stayed in his box, and watched Jonbon go through a strange race to win. How did you interpret it all?
Well, last week, obviously, we talked with Steve Mellish, didn't we, about El Fabiolo, and we both, Steve and I think, came down to the conclusion that we would probably be in his camp, heading to Cheltenham. I think I've written something similar in the Weatherby's Guide, this year's guide, excellently compiled by Paul Ferguson. And I think going over the line, I was quite content with what I'd written about El Fabiolo and Jonbon, and I wasn't upset about the position I'd taken. And I've gone back and watched the race 2 or 3 times, Jonbon, and I don't think he was quite as underwhelming as a lot of people have sort of suggested. I think my initial feelings about the race were that, crikey, that was disappointing. That was lackluster. That, everything that everybody else has sort of suggested, really. And then I've gone back and watched it in the cold light today a couple of times, and I was a little bit unnerved by the fact that he drifted out right to a few of his fences, because that trait won't serve him very well if Dysite Dynamo's going 100 miles an hour at Cheltenham and there's real pressure on his jumping. People are also forgetting, and perhaps me and Steve perhaps overlooked it a little bit with El Fabiolo, that he clouted 1 or 2 around Leopardstown as well. So I don't think that either of the top 2 in the market are blemish free when it comes to their fencing technique. The only thing you'd say is with El Fabiolo, it was only his second time. They went the mother and father of a gallop at Leopardstown, and he can probably get a little bit better. Jonbon, we thought, was very, very proficient and accurate in that sphere, and he just showed little vulnerabilities, I thought, around Warwick. I thought it was a cute ride from Harry Skelton, who obviously made the most of Calico's ability. But Jonbon opened the door for him by drifting right, and then Calico, went straight through it and tried to establish a lead. And but from missing out the last in the back straight, would have been 3-4 clear with some momentum. He was slovenly through that fence, and that allowed Jonbon to close and ultimately pass him on the home bend and win quite comfortably going away. I think it's a bit of a wake-up call probably, and I think they'll be glad they've got the run into Jonbon. He obviously returned with a little bit of a cut as well, which isn't serious, so I'm told, but it's, still might be something that was inconveniencing. And I thought it was probably a very, very smart and mature ride from Aidan Coleman, who didn't panic. And I think maybe some jockeys on a 1-16 chance in a big race, yeah, okay, we only had 2 runners, and it was a Grade 2, not a Grade 1 at a big festival. But it was a big race. It was a big race for Jonbon's season and his career going forward. I thought Aidan Coleman was very cute, really. Just allowed him to gather himself, and he could have easily just thrown him at one of those fences to try and close the deficit quickly, but he didn't. He just bided his time and won very comfortably in the end. And I think they'd have got a fair bit out of the performance.
I'm of the opinion that I think Jonbon did really well to win in the manner that he did. And like you, at first, when it all happened, the shock and the fright of seeing Calico jump on, go past, I thought, oh no, as a Jonbon fan, and I think he's my Arkle horse, I thought, oh, this is disappointing. But I watched it like you again, and it seemed to me that it was just a case of the stars aligned to create that situation where if you watch Aidan Coleman going down to the fence where Calico is fired by Harry Skelton, meets it on a great stride, comes up the inside, Aidan Coleman's doing this to get Jonbon right at the fence, and Calico is picking up momentum into it and is flying. So the distance that he goes on at that point, I think, is exaggerated by, I think, three or four lengths because of momentum. Because one horse is going that way and the other one's going that way, and I think it looked a lot worse than it. Not than it actually was, because obviously that's how it panned out. But I think it was worse in terms of it looked worse in terms of the different ability ratings or the way the horses were going. I thought Aidan Coleman was just allowing him a nice hack around to begin with through the first half of the race, and then suddenly Harry Skelton's got his opportunity, horse slowing down the fence, I'm gone. And I thought what Jonbon did after that, like you say, Aidan Coleman didn't panic. He knew what he had under him, and it was just a question of gathering him back out. I don't see that as a massive negative. I just see that as a series of circumstances in that particular situation. But I do agree with you. I wasn't happy about seeing him jump out to his right on more than one occasion. And if you're being critical of him, you'd say you don't want to see that. That was a massive negative. But on the other hand, you could look at it with a slightly more mitigating and kinder light and say, well, he was dossing when he stopped.
Yeah, I mean, he looked like he lost a little bit of concentration down the back. It was just all coming so easily to him, and I think people were unnerved by Aidan's body language because he didn't sort of rustle Jonbon up immediately, and I think everyone was thinking, crikey, what has he gone wrong? Is he going to pull up? Is he this? Is he that? But it was just him being calm, assured, patient, and ice cold really, and also realizing, and this is probably something that he said in a number of interviews on a number of horses that he's ridden in the past 3 or 4 years, and something I've heard him say a number of times, it is a prep race, it is a stepping stone, it's his education. Aidan's very much a rider that it isn't necessary, unless it's a big day, it's not necessarily that day that is the be all and end all, the ultimate. And if things don't work out, they just don't work out, and you go back to the drawing board and start again. And I felt that if Jonbon had, say, ripped the next fence, then he would have just let him come home in his own time and not knocked him about and kept some petrol in the tank for a month's time. So I thought it was a savvy ride. I was going to say he was thinking on his feet. He was thinking on horseback, really. And I just think that he had the horses' well-being, preparation, ultimate target very much foremost in his mind.
Yeah, I didn't see as many negatives in Jonbon's performance, bar the jumping out to the right. So I think I'm still confident that he, for me, is the one still. I think overall, what he's done over fences is jumping. I think it's slightly cleaner. His overall jumping, slightly El Fabiolo, but El Fabiolo is a serious contender, so I'm not going to diss him. One other big performance, an obvious one to talk about from the weekend, was Blazing Cal, who added to the mix for the Stayers Hurdle. Obviously, this is a horse who's had, obviously been off the course for a while, and there was a doubt as to whether or not he would even make the festival. He turned back up in the Boyne Hurdle on Sunday. That was a super performance, wasn't it?
It was brilliant. It was almost breathtaking. I mean, he's been on death's door for 3 months. I mean, the stable have done a magnificent job, and obviously to see Charles's son Philip ride the winner in the manner that he did as well would have, given a lot of
Yeah.
He gained a lot of plaudits from that and would have given the stable a lot of satisfaction, I think. He's a proper player, travels well, 2 from 2 at Cheltenham, seems to go on good ground. If he doesn't recoil off that effort over the weekend, then he is a massive player and probably justifiably at the head of the market, really.
5
although,
for 2,
you know,
365, Tupu 11-4, Your Horse, home by the Lee 7-2, Flooring Porter, obviously the defending champ, 5-1, Marie's Rock 5-1, Gold Tweed 6-1. What a race!
Well, I think I would say in contrast to 1 or 2 previous renewals, I think we've got a lot of horses that are sort of on an upward curve. God bless them, you know, the likes of Paisley Park or your Thistlecracks, or, you know, horses that were coming towards perhaps the end of their careers or their end of their potency aren't dominating the market here. And we've got young, upwardly mobile stayers that are. And I think it's going to be a terrific race. I think we've got a number of different run styles as well. Obviously, Home by the Lee is probably a horse that takes a little bit more work, but finds plenty off the bridle. You've got Tupu, who's, you know, travels very well, as does Blazing Carl. And Marie's Rock, if the ground's dry and she doesn't go for the mares, is a very, very potent horse given her form at Cheltenham as well. So it is boiling up to be a terrific race.
Yeah, and I hope that Marie's Rock goes for the stairs. That's the championship race. That's the one that they none of this in between stuff. I've mentioned a couple of others from Saturday and also from Sunday, and you can tell me what else struck you. There was Theatre Glory, who won as she liked. Obviously, Shane Love didn't run. Magic Days won the Opera Hat Mares Chase. Billaway scrambled home in the Hunter Chase. He's out to 8-1 to try and hold on to his crown at the Cheltenham Festival. Lucia was mightily impressive at Exeter on Sunday. Hunter's Yarn won nicely in Ireland at Naas. Churchstone Warrior won the 10-up Novices Chase. Of those that I've mentioned, of the others, anything that really made an impression on you, Sam?
Well, really like the 2 Nicky Henderson mares. Obviously, Lucia might run for them in the mares Novices Hurdle. Shame she's not running the Supreme, isn't it, Rish?
She should be running in the Supreme.
Yeah, it'd be great to see her in that.
She might still. I mean, they haven't ruled it out.
Yeah, well, why not? I mean, it's more of an open race now, and
6-1. She's 6-1 Bet365 for the Supreme. Facile Vega 3-1. Well, Facile, you'd be scared of Facile Vega? No. Marie Nationale 3-1. When last?
I'll be terrified of him.
I'm trying to think of reasons to get her in the race.
Yeah, I mean, she took a liberty with the last, but I think that was probably she'd switched off by then, hadn't she? I mean, she's beaten 1 or 2 nice horses there. They got form around the track, and she's beaten them pointless. It was a smart effort from her. Theatre Glory went round Warwick on rails on Saturday. I mean, I'd love to have seen Love Envoy in the race, because that would have been a good test, I think, for Love Envoy. I mean, Molly Ollie's Wishes has won that race a couple of years ago, went into it in fairly good heart, and was simply destroyed by Theatre Glory. I think there's a danger that we may have underestimated her ability. I thought that was probably one of the performances of the weekend, really. She never came off the bridle, tanked it. You know, she was in 3rd, 4th gear all the way around as everything else was being rode along. I thought she was very tidy. Hunter's Yarn, obviously, supreme bound, I think, off the back of that performance, which I think he can probably improve on. But Willie Mullins very enthusiastic about his chance for Cheltenham going forward, and that might throw into conflict whether Impere Pass runs in the Supreme or the Ballymore. That gives them another string to the bow there. The double green, they're enjoying a great season, Rish.
Yeah, they've had a great time of things, and obviously Darryl Jacob has been on a lot of them. So hopefully he's hoping that Willie Mullins mob-handed to the Cheltenham Festival, he can get on more than he has done in the past, even though he's got on a few good ones. Yeah,
it'd be great for Darryl, wouldn't it? And you know, he has had a great season. Obviously, El Fabiole last weekend, Grade 1 win, and yeah, with more to come this spring. But I suppose that's the beauty of so much of a concentrate of talent at Close Sutton, is that you do get the opportunity, if you're a retained rider, to ride those horses in the races if they run more than one.
Yeah. Okay, so that is our racing recap. There was a lot to chat about. Some really interesting horses that we've seen. Obviously, great to see the likes of Blazing Cal back, adding to the mix for the Stairs Hurdle, and a great day for the Gordons at Newbury. and of course for the Burns family. It's been a family weekend in Ireland and in Britain. Racing recap behind us. Coming up next on Racing Weekly, we welcome David Pipe to the show. Well, as promised, David Pipe is joining us on Racing Weekly. David, first of all, good morning. How are you? How's the team? How's the family?
Morning, everyone. Yeah, all good, thank you. Yeah, my 50th birthday the other day, so we actually went away for the weekend, had a bit of a party, so sore head, but we're all good.
Well, happy belated birthday from all of us on Racing Weekly. It's actually been a really enjoyable season watching your team this year. I think you've got to 61 winners already. The best score you've got in the last, I think, 2015, 2016 was 64. So you're on track to beat that. And I think most people who enjoy and watch racing would say that it's been a bit of a resurgence from the David Pipe team. Is that how you've seen this season going?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a good season. Great work by everyone and great support from the owners. I think it's quite important to get a good start in the summer. We had a busy summer and we were very well supported, or are well supported by Fergus and Judith Wilson. They had lots of horses running during the summer. And so we got off to a good start and we've been able to keep the momentum up. And I think we're punching above our weight, really, to be honest, because we'd only have about 70 horses now. So not the numbers of old, but we're very pleased with how it's going.
Speaking of the numbers of old, obviously there's no way we can speak to David Pipe without talking about the upbringing alongside Martin. And I obviously had the pleasure of coming down before Christmas to see your mum and dad, who are extremely busy and still seem to be very, very deeply involved with everything. And one thing that struck me when I was chatting away with your dad before Christmas was the meticulous way that he did everything, still does everything now. And I just wondered how much of that you have adopted and how your approach to training is similar or different to the way Martin did it.
Well, it's very similar. Why change a winning system? It's very similar. We're still, weigh the horses once a week when they go racing, when they come back, see how much weight they've lost. The more weight they've lost, the harder the race they've had. Bloods, scopes, everything like that. So, we're firm believers that if you get, as well as listening to the boys and the girls riding the horses up the gallops and the feedback you get from how they're eating, etc., but you get as much information in front of you as possible, and then hopefully you'll make the right decision more than the wrong decision.
I know Sam will be chipping in just a moment, certainly with probably one or two horses that he'd like to talk about. But clearly, one star of the show for you this season has been Remastered, who's always been, he's just been a lovely horse. I mean, I remember watching him win the Reynolds Stand and thinking, well, he could be very good. And he hasn't always had the best of luck, would it be fair to say, about Remastered?
Yeah, well, he was unlucky in the Ladbrokes a couple of years ago, wasn't he? And he's always threatened to be a good horse. I was never sure he was an out and out stayer above 3 mile, but since he had the wind operation during the summer, he's come back and he's put in some very good performances this season. And what I loved about when he won at Kempton was that probably everything went wrong at Kempton, whipped round at the start. But what I liked most of all was that the last furlong was his strongest furlong, which in the past hasn't always been the case because of his breeding.
And what was it? So, what was the story at Sandown?
Very good question. Not entirely sure. Everything looked to be going according to plan. He stopped very quickly. Nothing's really come to light since. So we hope it's not a wind issue again. The only thing I would say is he's run twice at Sandown and pulled up twice at Sandown. So maybe, well, put it this way, we won't be going back to Sandown anyway.
He might be one of those rare creatures in this world that doesn't like Isha, which is very rare. Well, would you have a plan in mind for him for the remainder of the season, or a particular target that you'd like to see him hopefully get to?
Well, the trainer's keen on the Grand National. He's entered. The owners are still thinking about it. He'll probably go back to Kempton on the 24th, is it? I'm not sure what the race is called now. They change the names all the time. Yeah, hopefully be able to tell me. But he'll probably go back there if we get some rain. And obviously we need to see him bounce back. If he was to disappoint again, then the Grand National would be a question mark.
I think we call it the race that Gloria Victus won as a novice, probably. Sam, I'm sure that there are horses that you'd like to come in with and ask David about.
Yeah, certainly. Hi, David.
Hi, Sam.
Before I ask you about one or two horses, I want to know how you managed to get Bonanza Boy to win round Ludlow over 3 miles on good ground when you were riding.
Well, you see, I was cheating because Bonanza Boy was so small and I'm so tall that there was actually 6 legs running along the ground, not 4. Yeah, unfortunately, he needed a little bit of pushing, and I kept pushing, and he kept staying on. So I thought, I've got to keep on pushing. I was very tired after the race, but yeah, no, it was one of my 2 victories under rules.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I mean, God, if I could ever pick a horse never to win round Ludlow, I think he'd be top of my list. So I must have been some effort. Perhaps him and Riverside Boy, if you'd have got both of those to win, that would have been some effort. Just on your current string, obviously Jericho Rock is a particular favourite of mine. He was another one to run a blinder in the old Hennessy. What are your plans going forward with him?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it was not, the ground was pretty quick at Newbury that day, and he got a bit jarred up after that. So whilst the scans were all good and everything, we've taken the view to leave him for the rest of this season, and then hopefully we'll have a full season next year, and hopefully he will develop into a Grand National horse.
Because he's still only 7, isn't he?
Yeah, that's right. The time off won't do him any harm. There's still hopefully a lot more improvement.
Yeah, and a horse that obviously you've done particularly well with, and I think he will have run again by the time Racing Weekly hits the shelves, will be Barrier Peaks, who's sort of the old school pipe way, isn't it? Rack up these quick succession of victories.
Yeah, that's right. He's always been a nice horse. He ran well in a bumper first time out, and then picked up a few niggly problems and things didn't work out. But the tongue tie stepping up in trip, he's rattled off a 4-timer. Fergus Gillard's won the last 2 on him. He is in this week, but he won't be running this week. We'll see what the handicapper does on Tuesday, and he'll probably have a little break before he runs again. But hopefully, there's still more to come.
You got anything in mind for him further down the line?
Not at the moment, Sam. No. I think we will be able to make a bit more of a plan when we see what the handicapper does on Tuesday, and then we can have a think about it.
Yeah, good call.
David, if I just jump back in, and obviously you've been involved in the sport for such a long time at various levels, as Sam kindly pointed out, as a rider, as a trainer, obviously with your family as well. And it's always interesting to hear your thoughts, or someone with your experience, your thoughts on some of the current issues, and particularly the whip issue that's plaguing the sport at the moment. And I know Tom Scudamore has obviously been heavily involved in the steering group that advised on the whip. What's your view on the fact that the BHA seem keen to press forward with implementing the rules as of now, as they have changed?
Once again, it's been handled badly. We're just advertising it more, aren't we, when there's no need? Why it's coming in before Cheltenham is crazy. I mean, I've got a little bit fed up with it, to be honest. It's been handled very badly in my view, and the sooner it's sorted out, the better we can just get on with racing, really.
I mean, Sam, can you put any sense on obviously David says it, Paul Nicholls has said it, obviously the jockeys have all said it, and lots of other racing professionals and observers of the sport and fans of the sport saying, why now? Why not wait till Cheltenham, Aintree, etc. out the way, and then it can be implemented in a much more measured fashion?
Absolutely. I mean, if we're not careful, Cheltenham will be all about the whip issue rather than the terrific racing that we're going to witness. And I really just do not understand the timing and the need to press on with this. You know, I sort of questioned, are the BHA speaking to politicians, Parliament, whatever, and they're pressing for this to happen? And somebody probably quite rightly came back to me on social media and says, I think they've got enough on their plate without worrying about the whip issue. And that's absolutely right. So why is the need to keep pushing this through so quickly? You know, why not have a soft launch? I know we've had a bedding in period, that's great, and in practice that was a really good idea, but why not have a bedding in period post the spring festivals, during summer racing, and launch it there, and give the lads and lasses 3 or 4 months to work with that before perhaps the proper national hunt season starts in October, November. Everybody's then up to speed, and we can move forward with, you know, with some common sense. I think the jockeys have I think they've initially, you know, voiced their concerns about, you know, 1 or 2 of the rule changes, but I think now they're pretty much on board with it. I think the only bone of contention really with a lot of riders is the timing of it, and with trainers and owners as well, because they could be left with very few jockeys to pick from come Grand National meeting.
Yeah, I mean, and it's extraordinary, as you said, as David says, there are so many other issues in the sport that are of concern, and here's one that I think the sport in general feels. It feels like everyone is in agreement that now is not the time, and let's wait, and we can bring in it further. Everyone will be on board with that. But on that subject, David, I mean, it's always an awkward thing when you're asking people to come on this show and talk about some negatives. But there are so many issues that are clouding the sport, and obviously you've seen it through the years when your dad was training, doing so well, and seeing how it's gone now. I mean, watching it develop, progress, or even in some people's eyes, you know, things have got worse over the last 20, 30 years. What do you think would be the major issues? Obviously, we mentioned the whip, but what do you think would be the major issues outside of that now that you think racing must get a handle on sooner rather than later, or else it could be so detrimental that we may not be able to recover?
Well, it's the same old story, isn't it? Prize money. I believe there's too much racing. I believe if the Premiership football season can have a break, why can't jump racing and flat racing have a break? There's enough, you know, for jump racing would have a break. There's enough flat racing for the bookmakers. I think less is more, personally. Lot of talk. Once again, I get fed up reading it. I'm not sure they really. I know it's hard to say because you go to the sales ring at Cheltenham next month, and there'll be 400,000 or 500,000 being paid for horses. So it's hard when you see that, but at the same time, I still don't think people realise, you know, our sport was poor in prize money going into COVID, and it's probably got worse since, hasn't it? I know people are trying to make an effort, but I think the only time racing worked together was in COVID.
Yeah.
And they did a fantastic job. We were the first sport back on TV, and everyone worked together, and now it feels as if everyone's gone back in their own separate ways again.
It does feel a bit like that. And I think racing is a snapshot of the way perhaps the world has gone, because we did all seem to maybe pull in the right direction for a brief period. But as you say, it's a little bit fragmented. I mean, you know, Sam, you've heard it many times when we've had guests on this show. It's the same things that said over and over again, but nothing's improved on the front.
No, you know, and it's look, it's an invidious job, isn't it, being sort of head of the BHA at the moment. They're being attacked from all different angles, but I do think some of it is of their own making, to be honest. You just need clear and decisive leadership. Hopefully Joe Somers-Smith, you know, can bring that to the table. 1 or 2 comments about his speech recently just didn't quite sit comfortably, I don't think. Obviously, you know, black market operators is going to be a big threat to racing going forward, with affordability checks, waiting for this white paper that's going to come out. But that's not going to be legislation as such. That's just going to be recommendations. You know, why don't we grasp the nettle ourselves and you know, get in dialogue with bookmakers and you know, sort this issue out, because people are going out of the game And David highlights prize money, which is obviously a major issue. Well, that's not going to get any better if we start having money leaking away from the sport and leaking away from regulated bookmakers.
Yeah.
So, it's a major issue going forward.
Indeed, it'll get worse. One positive that, as we're coming to the end of this chat, David, one positive I wanted to mention, and I think ITV highlighted it when Alice Plunkett came down and did a piece at your yard, was the implementation that you've done at your yard for some time now of managing the staff, female staff in particular, with children, etc., and working on a rota system, which was really positive to see, because obviously over the years you hear about people walking away from the sport through going in, whether becoming mothers or fathers, I suppose, but mothers in particular, and it was the sort of thing that I think a lot of people were pleased to see, and hopefully more and more stables are going to do that. I mean, just to remind people, how long have you been doing that rota system for people with families?
Yeah, well, it's something that my mum and dad brought in years ago, yeah, look, it's working together, isn't it? I mean, we've got lots of staff that have been here for a long time, and to me, it's not rocket science. You've got a good girl. You work together. There's and 9 times out of 10, you're going to come up with an agreement, aren't you? So it's something, as I say, Mum and Dad brought in. We got loads of great feedback from the article, and my wife's did a podcast with Alice Plunkett as well, and and they've had hopefully other yards have. I'm sure a lot of the yards do it anyway, but hopefully some of the yards have taken it on board as well, and we've got to work together as a team. As I say, it's quite easy to work out, really.
Well, I know you say that, but we watch how things have gone in the sport and even in the country to a broader degree, where it does look obvious and easy to work out, but for whatever reason, it doesn't always pan out like that. Ultimately, David, as much as we chat about topics involved in racing, what people want to know is maybe something in the next week or so that you might be able to fire in their direction that would be worth keeping an eye on. And obviously you mentioned Barrier Peaks won't be running, but something that might be.
We're in for another dry week, aren't we? We love talking about the weather, don't we, and the ground and everything. What have we got coming up? Maybe Thomas Moore's going to have an entry at Ascot on Saturday. He ran in the Challow. He wants better ground, so the ground would suit him at Ascot on Saturday. And we might make an entry for Neon Moon, who should have won at Taunton the other day.
On your birthday, wasn't it, David?
Yeah, that's right. He's going to get entered in the big 3 mile chase at Ascot. He's another one that likes top of the ground, and I think it might just suit him around there, and he could run nicely at a slightly bigger price each way.
So Dave, is it unlikely that you'll run your couple of entries in the Grand National Trial at the weekend?
Ramsey won't run. First Lord Decree, he'll probably be confirmed, and we'll see what the ground's like. He'll either go there or he'll go to the Ida the week after. He keeps finishing second, so we thought we might as well put him in a good race, and if he finishes second in a good race, we'll pick up more prize money.
He's a nice horse, though, isn't he? He's like one of those type of horses that once he wins, I think the penny's really going to click. That he doesn't do a lot wrong, does he? No,
he's a little bit frustrating. So we'll try. We'll try him over 3 mile 4 or 4 mile, and might bring out a little bit more improvement.
And he's fine with the ground, isn't he? If it was decent ground.
Yeah, he'd be fine with the ground, and he did pick up a tendon injury a while back, so we'll just be a little bit concerned about the ground, but he does go on any type of ground.
Cool.
Well, David, thank you so much for joining us on Racing Weekly. We hope to hopefully see you on the racecourse in the next few weeks, few days, hopefully. And finally, 50 not out. Well batted. Happy birthday from everybody at Racing Weekly. And we can't wait to see Remastered again.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, David.
Thanks, David. Right, time for Simon and I to have a look at the couple of big races coming up this week. And obviously, it's always a little bit tricky trying to find out for certain who's going to line up early in the week. But at Ascot, the Ascot Chase potentially sees three very smart horses, certainly at the top of the market for that race, all due to line up. Fakir Duderi, the 7-4 favourite with Bet365 to repeat his win in the race last year. There's Shishkin in the race, Pic D'Orhy. Shishkin will be fascinating to see how he gets on there, Sam, with all that's gone before him. Let's deal with Fakir Duderi first of all. Would he definitely have won, or would he definitely have got beaten by Aucunrisque, who had taken control of that race at Thurles?
I think he was up against it myself, Rish, if I'm honest. But it was another good run from him. I mean, his stats at around 2.5 mile to 2 mile 5 are just incredible, really, incredibly consistent. Be interesting to see who rides him. Obviously, Mark Walsh on the sidelines, so wishing him well and a speedy recovery. JJ Slevin hopefully will come across, because he's only been beaten on the horse once in 4 starts, and that was in the Supreme. So yeah, he's an animal that has just developed into, well, he's got quite a niche distances, really, 2.5, 2.5. He's a specialist, probably like the 7 furlong horses on the flat, isn't he? He's developed a real good solid career CV at around that trip. Obviously a winner here before now, and he should cope with the ground okay, I think. I don't think he'd want it rattling quick, but fingers crossed the temperatures rise enough across the country that Ascot can get some water on, because I think looking at the forecast, the long-term forecast for Saturday, there's only 3 or 4 mil of rain, perhaps in some showers later on in the week. So we're going to be in a similar situation where we're running on rattling hard ground unless they can get some water on the track.
Yeah, fingers crossed. If the top 3 do indeed all line up, Fakir Duderi will face stiff competition. Pic D'Orhy has been in fabulous form this season. I think Paul Nicholls has been quite open about the fact that the horse has finally matured into the horse that he always thought he would be. And Shishkin, where do you stand on what should do now?
I suppose that the first thing you say about Shishkin is that Tingle Creek's worked out pretty well, hasn't it? I think Gentleman Demi and Funambule Sivola, they both ran in it. So the form's not too shabby by any stretch of the imagination. Edwardstone was only beaten, quarter of an inch, wasn't he, in the Clarence House, the rearranged Clarence House. So it's not buttons, that form. It's half decent, and he got a kick at the start and couldn't get going and got beat 15 lengths. And all of a sudden, the stable are very much, oh yeah, we want to get him over 2.5 and 3 miles now. So there's the opportunity here. Whether he runs or not is open to question. Whether the ground is, what they would like. I was going to say safe enough there, but I won't use that terminology. But safe for him, appropriate for him is probably better language. But he has just got to go through the wall again, hasn't he, really? And that's a little bit of a concern when horses have been through the ringer a bit like him in recent times, whether they mentally want to go and do it. And I think I'd like to see him first do that before I start parting with my hard-earned. Now, if any stable can recover past glory with a chaser, it's probably Nicky Henderson. Obviously, he's got good history and a good back catalogue when it comes to that. But I think Fakir Duderi would be very much my number 1 here. Be interesting to see how Pic D'Orhy goes, because he had a bit of a checkered record at Ascot before now. But as you rightly say, he's a big framed horse who's taken time to mature into that frame, but he's really bounced off flat tracks this year. Decent ground shouldn't be a problem for him. I would prefer if this race was at Kempton or probably Aintree, somewhere like that. Ascot is a little uphill and down dale. Whether that suits him quite as well as those flatter tracks is open to question. But be fascinating to see how he gets on. He hasn't looked too far behind Grade 1 company this year when the conditions are absolutely right for him, and he's maturing like a lot of those Nicholls horses do. It's amazing how Paul, who wouldn't leave anything for fitness and albeit is a patient trainer, but does like to get on and run them, how many of these horses, they have great longevity, especially these chasers, as we've seen in the past, and how they still keep producing their best as they get older.
Agreed. It's interesting you say what you say about Pic D'Orhy and his relative merits as whether he's a Grade 1, Grade 2 horse, because I vividly remember speaking to Harry Cobden after he won his most recent race at Kempton, and I said, is he a Grade 1 horse? Is this a horse that should have a go at the Ryanair? And he said, he's a good Grade 2 horse. And he didn't do that usual thing that sometimes connections do, where they tease you and say, you know, maybe he will prove it. He just sort of seemed settled on him being a Grade 2 horse.
Yeah.
But I wasn't that. And looking at the lineup for this race, my own personal opinion would think I don't think Fakir Dudari has been quite the horse this season that he has been in the past. So I think maybe he'll come forward again for the run last time, but he was, as you rightly say, I think he was in trouble behind Autant Couleur. And Shishkin definitely hasn't proven that he's the horse that he once was recently. So by a process of elimination, I'm with Pic D'Orhy because he's clearly a better horse this season than he's been before. So that's how I ended up choosing him.
You're not worried he's a Graham Hick?
I don't know if he definitely is a Graham Hick, because I don't think he's had the opportunity to test himself on a slightly more difficult track. Because obviously this is the real, as far as I can see, he looks like a different horse, a really mature horse. He travels very easily, jumps soundly, touch wood. So I'm hoping that all those factors mean that we've got a different horse, a more mature horse who can handle things a little bit better. So we're about to find out whether he's slightly better than Graham Hick, which is harsh because Graham Hick was pretty good.
He was pretty good, to be fair. And, you know, that would be a terrific victory for the De La Haye family as well, who put a lot of money into the game. And they love winners at Ascot, and to go and win this race would be, you know, immense for Johnny and his family, I would think. So
I bet you had a 405, DF 405, didn't you?
I had the Ian Botham attack.
Oh, sorry, beefy, yeah.
I couldn't afford a Magnum. But I was a bit before your time. I had the attack.
Okay, the double scoop, Grey Nichols.
No, it was Duncan Fernley attack, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, mine was the.
Oh, yours was the. Oh, yeah. Well, you would be, wouldn't you? You'd be one of those classical cover drivers. I was more
flashing outside off stump court.
Yeah, nicking off left, right, and centre. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm starting with Pic D'Orhy. Who are you siding with?
I'm going to go Fakir Dudari, uninspirational pick, but I think he's got less question marks for me.
All right. Now, the Grand National Trial at Haydock, very hard to work out who's definitely going to run. As much as anything, the ground is a big issue because I think, Sam, you were saying as well, there's not a lot of rain forecast for Haydock.
No, the one good positive we touched on is that temperatures across the country are going to go up a little bit, so there isn't the worry about courses freezing so much, so they might be able to get some water on. You know, you look down the list and I look down the betting, and Bristol May is going to need a lot of water to go on to run for me. Corrit Rambler, would he go straight to Cheltenham? Otherwise he'd give away what might be his Grand National mark perhaps. Does he know ran last weekend? Quick Wave, Soft Ground, Grumpy Charlie. Was he better Newby horse? He's got a few questions to answer. Ironbridge won a 2-horse race last time, which developed into a 1-horse race. Ramsey Tutele, Soft Ground, the Two Amigos, Welsh National winner, Soft Ground. So I wonder what we get left with here. And I've sort of sided with a couple at the foot of the weights that, yeah, the weights might go up a little bit because some of the higher rated horses won't run. Captain Catterstock normally wants a bigger break between his races, but I thought he was a good ground horse that stays well. He might be of interest if he does actually sort of get declared or make the latest declarations. And the other one I quite liked was Small Presence of Sue Smith, who would sneak in right at the foot of the weights. He's, I think, 2 from 3 at Haydock, ran in the Lincolnshire National behind Bangers and Cash, who didn't advertise a form at Utoxeter last time, but I think that place is sometimes alluring to itself. And I think with Small Present, you've got a horse that really has got to run in this, because this is a major opportunity for him. He goes on good ground, okay, I think, stays well, loves Haydock, and, you know, Sue Smith, and I wonder whether Thomas Wilmot will claim another 3 because he's a regular rider of the horse. So I thought sort of around 16-1 at the time of recording was very fair for him each way.
All right. Fiddle on the Roof, if he were to take, thought he would be of interest because he'll go on the ground. And I think, well, he clearly wasn't at his best when he ran in the big race at Newbury before Christmas. So I'm glad that he hasn't run since then, which suggests obviously something was seriously amiss, but it's behind him now. Hopefully he returns to action. So a tentative selection would be my call for Fiddler on the Roof in that race. So that's a look at the Ascot Chase and indeed the Grand National Trial on the weekend. Before we get into our Stayers Hurdle preview, don't forget to sign up to Oddschecker's brand new Cheltenham Super Service in the build-up to the festival. Find exclusive insight from Andy Holding and Johnny Ward, as well as market movers, news, giveaways, and even access to exclusive events. The sign-up link is in the description below. Join hundreds who've already joined the Super Service. Right, we're moving into the final segment or segments of the show, and we're going to look ahead to the Stayers Hurdle at the Cheltenham Festival. And I think it's fair to say that this is shaping up to be one of the best races of the festival. We've touched on it already with the fact that Blazing Cal, with that comeback run yesterday, or sorry, on Sunday, Sam, was magnificent. And he's put himself at the head of the market, 5-2 with Bet365, Teahupoo 11-4. Your horse, Home by the Lee, 7-2. But there are good alternatives, each way prices a little bit further down. So it's a deep race. And if Marie's Rock lines up for the race like she right, then what a race.
Let it lie, Rish, let it lie. I think this race and what's happened in this race in the last 2 weeks sort of highlights the vagaries of anti-post punting, because I took a view with Home by the Lee before Christmas that, you know, he could be a horse that would shorten in the market and might be one to be with here. And you sit there smugly after he wins over Christmas and you think, oh, I'm in a good position here. And then there's almost two world-class performances in the context of this race come from nowhere. Teahupoo and Blazing Cal, you know, the latter you thought might be out for the season, and then drifts markedly on Sunday before winning at Navan. And then the stable come on afterwards and say, oh yeah, he's done loads of work, we thought he'd go close. And you know, 2 weeks ago he wasn't even going to make the race and he was a big doubt for Cheltenham. So I think you have to be careful if you're going to have an anti-post bet that you don't get entrenched in a position, and sometimes it can be to your detriment that you just follow one horse throughout the season. Occasionally it can pay off, and you're right, but percentage wise those are very limited, certainly in my case. So I think you have to be open to new performances and most recent data. And Blazing Cal was tremendously impressive at Navan over a trip, probably short of his best. He showed pace, jumped well, he was given a lovely patient ride. And I can't imagine a scenario at Cheltenham, where he's won twice, where he doesn't swing off the second last hurdle and that long run to the last and still remain pretty much hard on the steel, to be honest. I think providing they go a reasonable gallop in the race, and that is a question mark in recent Stayers Hurdles with Flooring Porter dictating, but I think he has to be there and thereabouts at the last. Now, whether he gets up the hill quite as strongly as the likes of Home by the Lee or even Teahupoo or even Marie's Rock if she runs is open to question, but I think he's got a lot of ticks in the right boxes, this horse. He's got pace, jumps pretty well, loads of course form, trained by a genius. You know, the lad obviously knows him very well. Whether he would get the ride or not come Cheltenham week, I don't know. I presume they'd stay loyal to him, but there are a lot of positives for Blazing Cal. The only slight negative I can see is whether he's had a rush preparation to get ready for this race, and then he's got a month to get him right and fresh again for Cheltenham. But there's not a lot not to like about his chance, is there?
No, I think he's rightly the favourite for the race. He has always looked like he would be a Stayers Hurdle horse. And in fairness, connections have said that. They've said all along that this is a horse that they think could be a top-class staying hurdler. Even in the time since we've been recording this show, it's actually changed a bit. So Blazing Cal 11-4, Teahupoo 3-1, Home by the Lee 4s, Gold Tweet obviously needs to be supplemented at 7-1, Marie's Rock 8, Flooring Porter 12. So I mean I thought that was an interesting price for Flooring Porter, considering his record and the fact that this whole season is built around the Stayers Hurdle. I personally liked Blazing Cal like you did. I mean, if Marie's Rock turned up for the race, which I can't be sure, she would get my sentimental support as much as anything else. But just looking at prices, you've got to sure. Am I over-egging it? That Flooring Porter?
No, because he narrowed the gap with Home by the Lee, didn't he? From Navan to Leopardstown, it went from 12 lengths to 3 1/4 lengths. He's a horse that traditionally peaks in the spring. A lot of the Cromwell horses were out of form a little bit before Christmas. I think they're in better nick now. obviously. He's got fantastic course and distance form. I didn't think Lightning would strike twice and they'd afford him an easy lead last year, but I don't think there was any fluke about the performance. I mean, a couple of his performances at Cheltenham, and the first year, his legs were going that fast over the line. I mean, he could have nearly won a champion hurdle. He was going that quick from the last hurdle. So he's obviously an exceptionally good horse who is very much geared around one race a year. And I would almost disregard what he's done so far this year, other than to probably give him credit for his last performance at Leopardstown over Christmas, because I thought that was a marked step forward and probably only £7 or £8 off what he's capable of doing at his best. So he is looking a tall price, isn't he? But it's looking a deeper race than previous years. You know, as I say, the likes of Paisley Park ran it last year at the age of 10, and you know, now we've got some very much up and coming stayers with not so many miles on the clock, who look to have class, ability, speed. They jump well. You know, they've run in champion hurdles in Teopu's case, and now they're running in the stayers hurdle. You know, he's got a lot to offer in this race as well. So it's building up to one of the races of the year, and certainly one of the races of the festival. And I haven't said that too often about the stayers hurdle, I don't think, in recent times.
No, indeed. I agree with you on that. But it is a deep championship race, which is quite nice to say about a championship race at the Cheltenham Festival. So, Blazing Cal, the solid one?
Yeah, I guess. As I say, the only negative for me is that he's going to have a run again in 4.5 weeks' time in a championship race. And, you know, can he peak again? It's difficult to do that at a championship level. But he's with a master trainer, isn't he? I mean, Christ, you would, if Charles Burns got the cards out, I think I'd be reaching for the exit door. You wouldn't play poker with him, would you?
No, absolutely.
I mean, he is an incredible master of his craft. And, you know, I wouldn't be looking to second guess him if he feels that the horse can improve for that run and be even better Cheltenham week. Then that's probably enough for you, isn't it? Really, he did a good time as well. It wasn't as if they hacked round at Navan. They did a good time. The circuit time was very solid. It was even quicker than the Supreme Novice Hurdle aspirant of Willie Mullins's. So you know that it's good, strong form. It was a good renewal, and you know he put up a really sparkling performance. So, as I say, there wasn't a lot to like about it.
No, I think that's fair, and I agree with everything you said about Blazing Callan. You know, if to side with one with some finance, it would be him. I know Sam's been strong on Home by the Lee for a long time this season. Marie's Rock, I've liked her, and I want her to have a go in this race, because I think even stepping up to this distance and a strong pace, everything should suit her. She'll get that in the race. I think actually the race will be run to suit her. And you've got to say, for me, I think the value would be each way on Flooring Porter with his record in the race.
It's a tall price, isn't it? And I think, you know, some firms, notably 365, they offer each way extra. You might be able to get 4 places. You know, and you can't imagine 4 horses whizzing past him, and you're making money if he's in the first 4 of those. But, you know, it looks a bit of a no-brainer, doesn't it, Flooring Porter each way at those sort of odds. I'll stick loyal with Home by the Lee. I think he's pretty rock solid. I think he looked at an improved customer last time. That was a career best from him. Travelled better. I'll stay loyal to him, but I am very fearful. I think there's a couple of little jacks that have appeared in the race now, Teopu and Blazing Cal, and they look very, very talented horses.
They do indeed. But most importantly, it's a very, very good race, the Stayers Hurdle. Well, that is it for our preview of that race. Thank you very much for joining us on this episode of Racing Weekly, brought to you by Oddschecker in association with Bet365. You going racing this week, Sam?
I might go to Wincanton Saturday, hopefully. I've got a little share in a horse. If the ground's not too quick, we really need some rain, don't we? So I'm hoping to get to Wincanton on Saturday.
A name?
His name is Hard Frost. He was backed by the syndicate when he ran at Uttoxeter. He got beat 52 lengths. He was unbacked by the syndicate when he ran at Fontwell. He finished second, beaten a neck at 40-1. So as you can see, we're all very shrewd judges, and we can all predict when he's going to run well. But he's just a little fun horse. Hopefully we might nick a race somewhere along the line. I don't think he's really a punting medium, but fingers crossed, if we get a bit of juice in the ground on Saturday, he might run, because I think 1 or 2 of the owners might turn up on Saturday and watch him. So that'd be a nice day out.
Lovely. Well, best of luck with that. Thanks very much, Sam, for that, and obviously for being part of the show today. Thanks as well for David Pipe for joining us on this episode. Next week, we welcome back Gavin Lynch to the show. He'll be talking us through some of his anti-post selections for the festival. As always, if you like what you've heard or watched in this or any of our previous episodes on Racing Weekly, then leave us a review, kind one hopefully, on Apple Podcasts or in the comments section on YouTube. And we'll be back next week looking ahead to, amongst other things, the Ida Chase. But from Sam, myself, David and the Racing Weekly team, bye-bye.